Thank you to BMO ETFs for sponsoring this video. Now, as you know, I was born and raised in Vancouver, British Columbia, a Canadian through and through. I make my money in Canadian dollars, I spend my money in the Canadian economy, and of course I pay my taxes to the good old CRA. But a trending topic for investors is asking the question, should I be investing my money in Canada or the US? Well, understanding that Canada makes up roughly 3% of the global economy, give or take, I'm a believer that our money should be exposed beyond our home country. As an investor, we are not bound by borders, and it's our job to steward our capital to the places where we can get the best return. Well, today I want to talk about exactly how we can do that while still buying Canadian products. I think now more than ever, it's important to be supporting Canadian companies headquartered in Canada, but that doesn't mean we can't get our exposure to the biggest companies abroad. In fact, today I want to share with you a few staple options for Canadian investors that are Canadian based, but still get you that exposure to the US and beyond. The funds that we're going to be covering today are ticker ZSP, the BMO S&P 500 Index ETF, ticker ZEA, the BMO MSCI EFI or EAFE Index ETF, and a new one to the channel, ticker ZGQ, the BMO MSCI All World High Quality Index ETF. Let's start with the classic option, one of the most popular options from BMO ETFs. It's ticker ZSP, the BMO S&P 500 Index ETF. This is an ETF that has been designed to replicate, to the extent possible, the performance of the S&P 500 Index. It's a fund that charges a 0.09% MER, some of the lowest that you're going to find out on the market. And this fund, of course, is one that gives you exposure to the 500 largest companies in America. But of course, it's traded in Canadian dollars. It's traded on the TSX or the Toronto Stock Exchange. So while you are getting exposure to companies like Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, some of the largest US companies out there, you can do that without having to worry about converting your dollars or going cross-border to buy a US listed ETF. Now, the US market, of course, isn't the only market that investors consider. Let's take a look into fund number 2, which is ticker ZEA, the BMO MSCI EFI Index ETF. This is a fund designed to replicate, to the extent possible, the performance of the MSCI EFI Index and provide exposure to international equities across developed market countries around the world, excluding the US and Canada. This one charges a 0.22% MER, and it's essentially giving you that international exposure to geographies beyond North America. We see here particularly places like Japan, the UK, France, just to name a few. Feel free to pause the screen and take a look. You're going to recognize some of these popular international holdings that you'll be getting exposure to, such as Nestle, SAP, Shell, again, just to name a few. In my opinion, funds like these are so valuable because frankly, it can be challenging to first and foremost, identify companies from foreign markets that you want to add to your portfolio, and B, even if you have identified and found some you want, going out and actually buying those and worrying about what exchange they trade on, currency comes into play, whether your brokerage allows it, that can be a challenge. And a fund like this, as of the time of filming, holds 698 holdings, getting you exposure to some of the biggest and most popular international stocks, again, while all traded in Canadian dollars on the TSX, so a simple solution to getting that global exposure. And lastly, let's highlight a new one here to the channel. It's ticker ZGQ, the BMO MSCI All Country World High Quality Index ETF. This is a fund that's been designed to replicate, to the extent possible, the performance of the MSCI All Country World High Quality Index. It's essentially a play on the total world exposure, focusing in on global equities with a high ROI, stable earnings growth, and low financial leverage. And this is a fund that, in my opinion, kind of combines the best of both worlds, where you're getting the exposure to large and mid-cap stocks from both developed markets and emerging markets. You can see here the fund is predominantly weighted to America, with global exposure being the complement. We see the 74% weighting to the US at the time of filming, with the remaining quarter or so scattered across some global exposure, places like Taiwan, United Kingdom, and Switzerland, just to name a few. Now, if you look at the company breakdown or the stocks held within this fund, we are going to see mainly the US large caps filling up a good chunk of the top 10. Logically so. 74% of this fund is invested in the States, but you will see an example like TSM, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing stock out of Taiwan. This makes up a 3.12% weighting at the time of filming, so you see how that gets mixed in. Now this one does come in at the highest MER of our list today at 50 basis points, but it does, in many respects, act as a one-stop or a one-fund solution. So the value here can be justified for the simplicity that a fund like this offers investors. In summary, the way that I see it, as a Canadian investor, the options that we have available from BMO ETFs, they help us expand our horizons, not just to the US, but across the globe. And if you were looking to construct a portfolio of specific pieces, for example, an S&P 500 fund, a TSX fund, an international fund, etc., well, you can easily pick products from ETF providers that are headquartered in Canada to get you that appropriate exposure. You can also look to keep things even simpler, as mentioned, with an all-country play like we just discussed in ZGQ or even ZEQT, which we didn't cover in today's video, but as you know, this is a fund that I personally own in my portfolio. At the end of the day, BMO is a trusted Canadian ETF provider. They've been providing ETFs to Canadians since 2009, and as covered, some of their ETFs have management fees as low as 9 basis points, like we covered today. So whatever your personal approach is as an investor, they offer a wide variety of products to support the Canadian economy. As always, I'll be including all the links down below to the funds that we covered today, where you can go visit BMO's website to do your own research and due diligence. But once again, I want to thank BMO ETFs for sponsoring this video.